I dedicated my entire life to our family business. 10 years of 80-hour work weeks, sacrificed relationships, and missed vacations. Then one Friday, I accidentally discovered legal documents showing my parents had secretly transferred 75% ownership to my sister Paula, who barely worked part-time. When Dad called me panicking about losing our biggest client a week after I stopped working, I just said, "Let Paula handle it." The look on his face was priceless. Before I dive into this wild journey, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. If you've ever felt underappreciated by family, you'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. My story might just give you the courage to stand up for yourself too. My name is Rebecca Mitchell, and at 32, I had already given a decade of my life to Mitchell Construction, our family business. Some of my earliest memories involve playing under my father's massive oak desk, coloring on the backs of old invoices while he made calls to clients. By age 8, I knew the difference between a blueprint and a floor plan. At 12, I spent summers filing papers and answering phones at the reception desk. My father, Thomas Mitchell, beamed with pride whenever clients commented on my professional phone manner. "She's got the Mitchell business sense," he'd say, squeezing my shoulder. "Rebecca will run this place someday." Those words shaped my entire life. While other kids dreamed of becoming astronauts or veterinarians, I only ever wanted to build Mitchell Construction into something magnificent. My college decision was a no-brainer: business management with a minor in construction administration. I graduated top of my class, turned down 3 job offers from prestigious firms, and went straight to work for my father the Monday after graduation. For the next 10 years, I lived and breathed that company. I was first to arrive and last to leave, often sleeping on the office couch during busy seasons. I built relationships with every major client, memorized their preferences, their children's names, their anniversaries. I modernized our accounting system, digitized our records, and implemented project management software that cut our timeline overruns by 40%. Revenue doubled under my watch as operations manager, though my father kept the official title of CEO. My personal life? Practically non-existent. 2 relationships ended because I consistently prioritized work emergencies over date nights. My apartment was essentially a place to shower and occasionally sleep. Friends stopped inviting me to weekend trips because they knew my answer would be, "Sorry, we've got a project deadline." I missed my college roommate's wedding because it coincided with the Anderson Construction contract negotiation, our biggest client to date. I didn't regret these sacrifices because I was building my future. Then there was my sister, Paula. 2 years older at 34, she couldn't have been more different from me. Where I was practical, she was creative. While I worked 80-hour weeks, she spent her 20s traveling through Europe, completing an art history degree, and finding herself. She dated interesting men with accents, lived in tiny apartments in Barcelona and Florence, and came home with stories about midnight swims in the Mediterranean. Don't get me wrong, I loved my sister. We just operated in completely different worlds. She was the free spirit, I was the responsible one. She was our mother's daughter. Artistic, emotional, and charming. I was our father's, analytical, determined, and hardworking. When Paula suddenly moved back home 2 years ago after a breakup with a French gallery owner, my parents welcomed her with open arms. To my surprise, she expressed interest in the family business. Despite having 0 construction experience, my father created a vague creative director position for her. She worked maybe 25 hours a week, took 2-hour lunches, and still left by 4 p.m. most days. I didn't mind at first. I was happy to have my sister back, and her ideas for redesigning our marketing materials actually looked great. Our mother, Linda, was thrilled to have both her daughters involved in the business. Family dinners became a regular Sunday tradition again, with Paula entertaining us with stories of difficult clients while I mostly listened, too exhausted from the work week to contribute much. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. The way conversations about the company's future started to die when I walked into the room. The private meetings between my father and Paula that I wasn't invited to. The way my mother would awkwardly change the subject whenever I mentioned long-term growth strategies. "You work too hard, Rebecca," she'd say, refilling my wine glass. "Let's not talk business tonight." But I trusted my family implicitly. I believed in the promise my father had made since I was a child, that someday Mitchell Construction would be mine, that all these years of sacrifice would be worth it, that my dedication mattered. I was about to discover how wrong I was. It happened on a Friday afternoon in late September. I was searching for the original contract for the Riverside Development Project after discovering a discrepancy in the billing. We were in the middle of a major office reorganization that Paula had suggested, another one of her fresh ideas that created chaos in our previously efficient filing system. I rifled through the cabinet labeled legal documents, confidential, assuming the contract might have been misfiled there. What I found instead was a thick manila folder with Mitchell Construction, ownership transfer, typed neatly on the tab. Something in my stomach tightened as I pulled it out, telling myself it was probably just outdated paperwork from when my grandfather had transferred the business to my father decades ago. The date on the first page stopped me cold, March 15th of the current year, just 6 months ago. My eyes scanned the document, certain I was misunderstanding something. The legal language was dense, but some phrases jumped out with terrifying clarity. Hereby transfers 75% ownership stake to Paula Elizabeth Mitchell, and remaining 25% retained by Thomas and Linda Mitchell. My name appeared nowhere in the 20-page document. I felt the blood drain from my face as my hands began to tremble. The office suddenly seemed too bright, the air too thin. I flipped through page after page, looking for some explanation, some clause that would make sense of this betrayal. There was nothing. "Rebecca? Are you okay?" Eleanor Johnson, our office manager who'd been with the company since before I was born, stood in the doorway. Her face shifted from concern to guilt as she saw what I was holding. "Did you know about this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Eleanor looked down at her sensible shoes. In that moment, her silence confirmed what the document told me. I was the last to know. "Your father asked us not to discuss it," she finally said. "He wanted to tell you himself when the time was right." "When the time was right?" I repeated, a hysterical edge creeping into my voice. "It's been 6 months, Eleanor." She reached toward me, but I jerked away, shoving the papers back into the folder and clutching it to my chest. "Who else knows?" "Most of the senior staff were informed," she admitted, "for contract signing purposes." The humiliation burned worse than the betrayal. Everyone knew. They'd all watched me work myself to exhaustion, knowing my sister now owned the company I devoted my life to. How they must have pitied me. "Rebecca," Eleanor started again, but I was already moving past her, the folder still gripped tightly in my hands. "I need to go," I mumbled, grabbing my purse from my office. I didn't bother with my laptop or the half-finished reports on my desk. Nothing seemed to matter anymore. The drive home passed in a blur. I barely registered running a red light or nearly sideswiping a delivery truck. My mind replayed every conversation where my father had talked about my future at the company. "This will all be yours someday, Becca," he'd said on my first day of official employment, gesturing around the modest office we'd since expanded into a 2-story building. "I'm training you to take over so I can retire by 65, he mentioned just last year at the company Christmas party. Lies. All of it. My apartment was dark and quiet when I arrived. I hadn't bothered to decorate much in the 5 years I'd lived there. What was the point when I spent so little time at home? I sank onto my couch, still clutching the folder, and stared at the blank wall where other people might have hung family photos. What had I done wrong? Had I not worked hard enough? Was I not smart enough? Not creative enough? The questions circled like vultures as the room grew darker around me. I thought of every project I'd successfully completed, every client relationship I'd nurtured, every late night and early morning I'd given to Mitchell Construction. And for what? So my sister could waltz in after a decade of absence and take everything I'd helped build? The unfairness of it crushed the air from my lungs. 10 years of my life, gone. All those sacrifices for nothing. The future I'd been promised had been handed to Paula on a silver platter while I wasn't looking. I reached for my phone and dialed the only person I could think to call. Allison?
It's me.
I need to talk. My best friend since college answered on the second ring. Rebecca? Are you crying? What's wrong? I hadn't even realized tears were streaming down my face until she mentioned it. They gave the company to Paula, I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. 75% ownership. Behind my back. Months ago. Oh my God, Allison breathed. That's unbelievable. I'm coming over. Don't move. I didn't have the energy to argue. I just sat in the dark, reading and rereading the document that proved my family's betrayal until Allison's key turned in my lock 30 minutes later. One look at her face, filled with outrage on my behalf, broke the numbness that had settled over me. As she wrapped her arms around me, I finally let myself sob. 10 years, Ollie, I choked out. 10 years of my life. I know, honey, she said, stroking my hair. I know. We stayed like that until I had no tears left, just a hollow feeling in my chest and a decision forming in my mind. If they didn't value my contribution, I wouldn't give it anymore. If Paula owned the company, she could damn well run it. It was time to stop working for free. Sunday evening arrived with a sick sense of dread building in my stomach. After spending Saturday with Allison plotting my next moves, I had decided to confront my family at our regular dinner. I arrived at my parents' suburban home precisely at 6 p.m., the familiar brick facade and manicured lawn suddenly seeming like the front of a stranger's house. The delicious smell of my mother's pot roast, my favorite, wafted from the kitchen as I walked in without knocking. My father sat in his usual armchair, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed what looked like project documents. Paula was setting the dining table, laughing at something our mother had said in the kitchen. It was so normal, so routine, as if they hadn't completely upended my life. Rebecca, my mother called cheerfully. Perfect timing. Dinner's almost ready. I forced a smile and accepted her hug mechanically. Can I help with anything? No, Paula's got it all under control. Just relax. Paula shot me a smile. Hey sis, how was your Saturday? I tried texting you about the new client presentation, but you didn't respond. Because I'd been too busy having an existential crisis about the company you stole, I thought bitterly. Just needed some time offline, I said vaguely. The presentation is fine. My father finally looked up from his papers. There you are. I was starting to think you'd skip dinner. We have some exciting news about the Westridge project. The casual way he spoke, as if nothing had changed, made something snap inside me. But I held my tongue. Not yet. I needed to get through dinner first, to confirm that they had no intention of telling me the truth. Dinner was excruciating. I pushed food around my plate while my family discussed business, as usual. Paula enthusiastically described her ideas for a new marketing campaign. My father nodded approvingly at everything she said. My mother kept trying to steer the conversation to safer topics, her garden club, the neighbor's new dog, an upcoming community fundraiser. I barely spoke, answering direct questions with the shortest possible responses. If anyone noticed my unusual silence, they didn't mention it. After dessert, apple pie that I couldn't bring myself to taste, my father stood up. Well, I think I'll go catch the end of the game. Paula, stop by my study later. I want to discuss that supplier issue. It was now or never. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I need to talk to all of you. Together. Something in my tone made them freeze. My mother's hand paused midway, through clearing a plate. Paula's smile faltered. My father slowly sat back down. What's going on, Rebecca? My mother asked, concern creeping into her voice. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder I'd discovered on Friday, placing it deliberately in the center of the dining table. When were you planning to tell me about this? The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face hardened into the expression he used when dealing with difficult clients. My mother's hand flew to her throat, her eyes widening in dismay. Paula looked down at her lap, suddenly intensely interested in her napkin. Where did you get that? My father finally asked. Does it matter? Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I supposed to work 80-hour weeks for the rest of my life without knowing my sister owns the company? My mother reached for my hand. Sweetheart, we were going to tell you. We just couldn't find the right time. I yanked my hand away. The right time would have been before you signed these papers, Mom. Not 6 months later. Rebecca, my father said in his authoritative business voice, this was a strategic decision for the future of Mitchell Construction. Paula has fresh ideas, a new vision for where we can take the company. And I don't. After 10 years of dedicated service, after doubling our revenue, after sacrificing everything for this company, my voice rose with each question. You're too much like me, my father replied, as if that explained everything. Too traditional. The construction industry is changing, and we need to change with it. So teach me, I shouted, slamming my hand on the table hard enough to make the silverware jump. If you wanted different ideas, why didn't you just talk to me? We thought you'd understand. My mother interjected weakly. You've always been so practical, so logical about business decisions. Practical enough to work myself to death for a company that was promised to me? Was that the logical business decision you expected me to understand? Paula finally spoke up. Becca, it wasn't like that. Dad approached me with the idea. Don't. I cut her off. Don't pretend you didn't know what you were taking from me. That's unfair, my father interjected. Paula has been instrumental in our recent growth. Her expansion plans for the residential market. Her expansion plans? I laughed bitterly. You mean the exact same plans I presented to you 3 years ago? The ones you called too risky? His momentary silence confirmed my suspicion. Let me get this straight, I continued, anger making my voice shake. You rejected my ideas, then gave them to Paula, along with 75% of the company, while I continued working myself to exhaustion thinking I was building my future? Rebecca, you're being dramatic, my father said dismissively. You still have a job. A good job with growth potential. Growth potential? I repeated incredulously. I've been running that company for years while you played golf with clients. What exactly am I supposed to be growing toward now? Your sister needs your experience, my mother pleaded. You two have always made such a good team. We're not a team, Mom. I'm the workhorse, and she's the owner. There's a difference. I turned to Paula. How many hours did you work this week, Paula? 20? 25? I pulled 3 all-nighters finalizing the Anderson bid. Paula had the decency to look ashamed. I know you work harder than me, Becca. I've always admired your dedication. Admired it so much you took the company that should have been mine? That's enough, my father thundered, standing up. This business decision wasn't made lightly. Paula has qualities this company needs moving forward. And what are those exactly? The ability to take 3-hour lunches and charm clients? Meanwhile, I've dedicated my entire adult life to Mitchell Construction. I've missed weddings, ended relationships, and sacrificed any semblance of a personal life because I believed in the future you promised me. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. So what now? My father demanded. You've made your point. What do you want? I stood up slowly, gathering my purse and the folder. Nothing. Not anymore. If Paula owns the company, she can run it. I quit. You can't quit, my father sputtered. We have the Anderson project starting next week. The Maxwell bid due on Friday. The quarterly financials. Let Paula handle it, I said coldly. I'm done working for free. My mother started crying. Rebecca, please. We're family. Family doesn't do this to each other, Mom. I moved toward the door, pausing to look back at the 3 shocked faces. I'll email my formal resignation tomorrow. Don't worry, I'll be professional. Unlike some people in this room. As I walked to my car, I heard the front door open behind me. Paula called my name, but I didn't turn around. I got into my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely insert the key into the ignition. Only when I was 3 blocks away did I pull over and finally let the tears come. Monday morning, my alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. as it had for the past decade. For a brief, blissful moment, I reached for my phone on autopilot before the events of the weekend came crashing back. I didn't have to go to work today. Or ever again, at least not to Mitchell Construction. I silenced the alarm and lay back, staring at the ceiling. The familiar anxiety of a Monday morning, mental checklists, anticipated client calls, project deadlines, was replaced by an eerie emptiness. Without the company, who was I? After a decade of the same morning routine, shower by 5:45, coffee and email check by 6:15, out the door by 6:30, I found myself at a loss. I made coffee out of habit but left it untouched on the counter. I opened my closet and stared at the neat rows of business attire, then closed it again without selecting anything. Eventually, I pulled on yoga pants and an old college sweatshirt, clothing I usually reserved for the few hours of weekend freedom I allowed myself. By 7 a.m., I'd already checked my phone 15 times. No calls from my parents yet. No desperate texts from Paula. Part of me was disappointed. Did they really think the business could function without me? Another part was relieved to have space to process my next steps. At 8:30, I called William Barnes, my mentor from college, who now ran his own successful engineering firm. He'd been trying to recruit me for years. "Rebecca," he answered warmly. "This is unexpected. Don't tell me Thomas finally pushed you too far?" I laughed humorlessly. "You have no idea." Over the next hour, I poured out the whole story. William listened without interruption, occasionally making sounds of disbelief or outrage on my behalf. "That's unconscionable," he said when I finished. "After everything you've done for that company? Unbelievable." Was I a fool, William? For believing him all these years? "No," he said firmly. "You were loyal. That's not the same as foolish. But loyalty should be reciprocated. So, what do I do now? First, you protect yourself. Document everything, your contributions, your client relationships, any proprietary systems or processes you developed. Not to take them, he clarified quickly, but to clearly establish your value for whatever comes next. I spent the rest of the morning following his advice. I created a comprehensive document detailing every major project I'd managed, every client relationship I'd cultivated, every system I'd implemented. I was careful to include only facts and figures, not company secrets or proprietary information that might create legal issues later. But I was strategic in what I excluded. My personal notes on client preferences, the relationship management techniques I'd developed over years, the shortcuts and efficiencies I'd created that weren't officially documented anywhere. These were part of my value, not the company's. At noon, I drafted a formal resignation email. It was professional, detached, and gave no hint of the emotional turmoil behind it. I stated that I would be taking my accumulated 6 weeks of vacation effective immediately, as was my right under my employment contract. I had never taken more than a long weekend in 10 years. The vacation time had piled up, unspent. I set up an email autoresponder. "I am currently out of the office and unavailable. For all inquiries, please contact Paula Mitchell at email address." Then I turned off my work phone and placed it in a drawer. The rest of the day passed in a blur of administrative tasks, checking my employment contract with the help of my lawyer friend Sofia Rodriguez to ensure I wasn't violating any clauses, gathering my personal financial documents, and updating my resume for the first time in a decade. "You realize you're incredibly marketable, right?" Sofia said, reviewing my experience. "Any construction firm would be lucky to have you." Her words were a balm to my wounded pride. I hadn't allowed myself to consider that I might be valuable outside of Mitchell Construction. That night, after dark, I drove to the office to collect my personal belongings. I'd chosen 9 p.m. deliberately, late enough that no one would be there, but not so late that it would appear suspicious on the security cameras. I still had my key and security code, and I had every right to collect my things. The office was eerily quiet. I moved efficiently, packing photos, awards, reference books, and the few decorative items I'd accumulated over the years. I left behind anything the company had paid for, no matter how small. I wouldn't give them any reason to accuse me of impropriety. As I emptied my desk, I came across the framed family photo from the company's 25th anniversary celebration 5 years ago. My father had his arms around both Paula and me, beaming with pride. We all looked so happy, so united. Had it all been an illusion? For a moment, my resolve wavered. This was still my family, despite everything. Was I overreacting? Throwing away not just my career, but my relationship with my parents and sister? Then I remembered the ownership transfer document, the casual way they discussed business plans without me, the years of sacrifice that had amounted to nothing. I placed the photo face down in my box, switched off the light in my office for the last time, and left my keys on Eleanor's desk with a brief note. Please forward my final paycheck. As I drove home, I felt a curious mixture of grief and liberation. A chapter of my life had ended, but perhaps a new one where I valued myself properly, was about to begin. The first day of freedom was disorienting. I slept until 9 a.m. for the first time in years, then spent the morning in a strange limbo, constantly checking my personal phone for messages that weren't there. By afternoon, the silence from my family was becoming conspicuous. Surely they'd realized by now that I wasn't coming back. I met Sophia for lunch, bringing my employment contract and the company ownership documents. Legally, they haven't done anything wrong, she confirmed after reviewing everything. Morally? That's another story. What are my options? I asked, pushing away my barely touched salad. You could fight for a severance package based on your years of service. You could negotiate for a small ownership stake in recognition of your contributions. Or, she paused, giving me a measured look, you could walk away completely and build something new. I don't know who I am without Mitchell Construction, I admitted. Maybe it's time to find out, she suggested gently. I spent the next few days establishing a routine that had nothing to do with work. Morning walks in the park I'd driven past for years, but never visited. Actual sit-down breakfasts instead of coffee gulped while checking emails. Yoga classes I'd always been too busy to attend. I caught up on sleep, read books for pleasure, and tried to quiet the voice in my head that kept asking what emergencies were happening at the office. By day 3, the text started. Paula, where did you put the Anderson contract revisions? Paula, the Westridge client is asking for you specifically. What should I tell them? Paula, Dad is freaking out about the Maxwell bid. Did you finish the cost projections? I didn't respond to any of them. My father's call started on day 4. I let them go to voicemail. Rebecca, this is ridiculous. You've made your point. We have responsibilities to our clients. Call me back immediately. My mother was more subtle, her voice messages laced with guilt. Sweetheart, we're all so worried about you. This isn't like you, abandoning your work like this. Family businesses have complications, but we can work through this together. I deleted them all. By the end of the first week, I developed a self-care routine that was helping me process the anger and betrayal. Morning journaling to vent my feelings. Afternoon consultations with executive recruiters who were stunned by my qualifications. Evening calls with friends I'd neglected for years while working 80-hour weeks. But my mental health was still fragile. I vacillated between empowerment, finally standing up for myself, and crushing depression about all the years I'd wasted. Sometimes I'd find myself standing in my kitchen, unsure how long I'd been staring at the wall, reliving moments when I should have seen the signs. On day 6, Maxwell Anderson himself called my personal cell phone. Rebecca, his gruff voice came through the speaker. What's going on over there? I've been working with your sister, but she doesn't have half your knowledge about our project requirements. Maxwell was the CEO of Anderson Construction, our biggest client. His company represented nearly 30% of Mitchell Construction's annual revenue. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, I said carefully. I'm on extended leave at the moment. Paula should be able to assist you with anything you need. That's not what I asked, he pressed. You've been my point person for 5 years. Suddenly you're on leave and no one at Mitchell will give me a straight answer? I've got a $12 million project starting next month and I need someone competent running it. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar pull of responsibility. It would be so easy to jump in and fix things. Mr. Anderson, I'm no longer in a position to manage your project. If you're not confident in the current leadership at Mitchell Construction, perhaps you should consider your options. There was a long pause. I see, he finally said. Well, if your situation changes, you have my number. And Rebecca? If you end up elsewhere, I'd appreciate a call. Loyalty to good project managers trumps loyalty to companies in my book. After hanging up, I sat for a long time, turning his words over in my mind. For the first time, I allowed myself to genuinely consider a future completely separate from Mitchell Construction. Exactly 1 week after I'd walked out, my father called again. This time, something told me to answer. Rebecca, he barked without preamble, panic evident in his voice. Anderson is threatening to pull their contract. $12 million. He says he won't work with Paula. You need to come in tomorrow and smooth this over. A strange calm settled over me. 7 days ago, this crisis would have sent me rushing to the office, working through the night to save the relationship. Now I felt oddly detached. Let Paula handle it, I said evenly. She owns the company after all. Damn it, Rebecca. This isn't a game. This is the business your grandfather started. Your heritage. My heritage? I interrupted, anger flaring. You gave my heritage to Paula. Remember? I don't have time for this, he shouted. Anderson wants an answer by tomorrow morning, or he's taking his business to Westfield. Then I suggest Paula start preparing a very good presentation. I ended the call and switched my phone to silent, half expecting him to show up at my door. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see my father standing there, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. His normally perfect tie was askew, and the confident posture he prided himself on had given way to slumped shoulders. For a moment, I considered not answering. But running away had never been my style. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door to face whatever came next. My father pushed past me into the living room without waiting for an invitation. He paced back and forth across my small living room like a caged animal, agitation radiating from every movement. Do you have any idea what you've done? He demanded, running a hand through his silver hair. Anderson is just the beginning. Westridge called this morning asking specifically for you. The Maxwell bid is due Friday and Paula can't make sense of your preliminary notes. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Sounds like a management problem. Good thing Paula's the owner. His face reddened. This isn't funny, Rebecca. The company is in crisis. No, Dad, I said calmly. You are in crisis. For the first time, you're facing the consequences of your decision to give the company to someone who can't actually run it. He stopped pacing and glared at me. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching everything fall apart. Not enjoying. Processing. There's a difference. I moved to sit on the couch, gesturing for him to take the armchair opposite me. After a moment's hesitation, he sat down heavily. I didn't come here to fight, he said, his tone shifting to one I recognized from countless negotiations with difficult clients. I came to offer you a solution. I'm listening. Chief Operations Officer, he said. Full autonomy over project management. Salary double what you were making before. Corner office. I nearly laughed out loud. You're offering me a title change and more money to come back and do the exact same job I was already doing? It's a significant promotion, he insisted. Direct report to the CEO. Paula, I interjected. I'd report to Paula. His silence confirmed it. Let me understand, I continued. You want me to come back and save the company from the mess you created, while still working for the sister you gave my birthright to. That's your offer? What do you want, Rebecca? He asked, exasperation clear in his voice. 40% ownership, I said without hesitation. Board position. Normal working hours. His eyes widened. That's ridiculous. Paula already owns 75%. Then she can sell some back. Or you and Mom can give me part of your 25. I don't care how it works mathematically. Those are my terms. Impossible, he scoffed. You can't seriously expect. Westfield offered me a job yesterday. I interrupted smoothly. Operations Director. Comparable salary to what you just offered, plus profit sharing. Normal working hours. For weeks annual vacation that I'd be required to take. This wasn't entirely true. I'd had a preliminary conversation with Garrett Westfield, but no formal offer yet. Still, the look of shock on my father's face was worth a small deception. You wouldn't, he whispered. They're our biggest competitor. I haven't accepted yet, I replied. But Maxwell Anderson already told me he'd follow me wherever I go. I wonder how many other clients would do the same? That would destroy Mitchell Construction, my father said, genuine fear in his eyes for the first time. I don't want to destroy anything, Dad. But I won't continue to build something that isn't mine. He stood up and resumed pacing. There has to be another solution. There is. The one I just proposed. 40% ownership, board position, normal hours. Paula would never agree to give up that much control. Then maybe you should have thought about that before giving her control in the first place, I said evenly. This isn't a negotiation where you have the upper hand anymore. I know my worth now. Do you? He stared at me for a long moment. I could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes, weighing the cost of meeting my demands against the potential loss of major clients, my institutional knowledge, and my relationships throughout the industry. I need to talk to you, Mother. And Paula, he finally said. You do that. He moved toward the door, then turned back. How long do I have before you accept Westfield's offer? 2 days, I said, picking a deadline that seemed reasonable. I'll need your answer by Wednesday evening. After he left, I leaned back against the couch, my heart pounding. I'd never spoken to my father that way before, as an equal, not as his daughter or employee. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Within an hour, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Then Paula. Same response. I wasn't going to let them tag team me or appeal to my emotions. The time for family sentiment clouding business decisions was over. The next morning, I met with Garrett Westfield officially. He was younger than my father by a decade, with a reputation for innovation that had helped his company grow rapidly in recent years. I've been trying to poach you for years, he said over coffee. Thomas always made it clear you were off limits. Things change, I replied. So I hear. He slid a folder across the table. This is what we can offer. Take a few days to think about it. The offer was generous, better than I'd implied to my father. It was tempting to accept on the spot, to make a clean break from the Mitchell family drama. But something held me back. Despite everything, Mitchell Construction was still in my blood. That evening, my mother showed up with a casserole just to check on you. I recognized the transparent attempt to soften me up, but invited her in anyway. Your father is devastated, she said, busying herself with serving the food I hadn't asked for. He's upset about potentially losing clients and money, I corrected. Not about hurting me. She sighed, sitting across from me at my small dining table. It's more complicated than that, Rebecca. He does love you. We both do. Love should include respect, Mom. What you did wasn't respectful. I know, she admitted, surprising me. I told him it was wrong not to include you in the decision. But you know how he gets when he thinks he's right. And what about Paula? Did she think it was right to take everything I worked for? My mother looked down at her hands. Paula was pressured. Your father convinced her it was the best solution for everyone. That was interesting information, but it didn't change my position. My terms still stand. 40% ownership, board position, normal hours. He's considering it, she said quietly. He's meeting with Harold now to discuss options. Harold Peterson had been our family lawyer for decades. If my father was consulting him, he was taking my demands seriously. After my mother left, I felt strangely unsettled. The possibility that I might actually get what I wanted, that my father might acknowledge my value, was almost harder to process than the betrayal had been. The following day passed without contact from any family member. I used the time to carefully review Westfield's offer and prepare questions. If Mitchell wouldn't meet my terms, I needed to be ready to move forward. At precisely 6 p.m. on Wednesday, my phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen. Rebecca, he said when I answered, his voice formal. We'd like to meet tomorrow to discuss your proposal. Neutral location. The Riverfront restaurant at noon. All of you? I asked. Yes. Your mother, Paula, and myself. And Harold, to handle the paperwork if we reach an agreement. I'll be there, I said, ending the call before he could say anything else. I spent that night preparing as I would for any major negotiation, reviewing numbers, anticipating objections, practicing responses. This wasn't just about ownership percentages. It was about reclaiming my value, both professionally and personally. One way or another, my relationship with my family and Mitchell Construction would be fundamentally changed by tomorrow's meeting. 2 days of silence from my family gave me unexpected clarity. Without the constant barrage of guilt-inducing messages and desperate calls, I could actually think about what I truly wanted. My apartment, usually just a place to sleep between workdays, became a sanctuary for reflection. Thursday morning, I dressed carefully for the meeting, a power suit I'd worn to close our biggest deals, subtle makeup, hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. My appearance had always been part of my professional armor, and I needed every advantage for this confrontation. Before heading to the Riverfront restaurant, I had a final phone interview with Garrett Westfield. The formal offer had come through, even better than the initial proposal, operations director with a clear path to partnership within 5 years. It was exactly the kind of recognition I'd always craved from my father. "We're excited about the possibility of you joining us, Rebecca," Garrett said. "Your reputation in the industry is stellar." "Thank you," I replied, feeling genuinely valued perhaps for the first time in my career. "I should have an answer for you by tomorrow." Having the Westfield offer as a backup gave me the confidence I needed walking into the restaurant. I arrived precisely at noon, spotting my family already seated at a corner table. Harold Peterson sat with them, leather portfolio open before him. My mother stood to hug me, but I offered a hand instead. This wasn't a family reconciliation. It was a business meeting. She sat back down, hurt evident in her eyes. My father and Paula nodded stiffly in greeting. "Thank you for coming," my father began formally. "We've reviewed your proposal." And I kept my expression neutral, though my heart was pounding. Before we get to that, Paula interjected. "I want to say something." She looked directly at me, her artistic hands fidgeting with her napkin.
"I'm sorry, Rebecca."
"I never meant to hurt you or take what you worked for." I hadn't expected an apology, especially not from Paula first. It momentarily knocked me off balance. "The truth is," she continued, "I'm overwhelmed. I've been working 18-hour days trying to keep up with everything you managed effortlessly. The Anderson account alone has me completely lost. Their specifications might as well be written in hieroglyphics." "You've been there 2 years," I pointed out. "Didn't you pay attention to how things operated?" "To the creative side, yes. To the operational nuts and bolts." She shook her head. "I thought I could learn as I went, but without you." Her voice trailed off. My father cleared his throat. "What your sister is trying to say is that we made a mistake." The admission hung in the air between us. In 32 years, I'd never heard my father acknowledge a mistake so directly. "Dad asked if I wanted the company," Paula said quietly. "He didn't tell me you'd been promised it your whole life." "Not until after the papers were signed." I looked at my father, who had the grace to look ashamed. "Is that true?" I asked him. "I may have downplayed certain expectations," he admitted. "I thought it would be easier for everyone." My mother reached across the table toward me, but stopped short of touching my hand. "We've hardly slept since you left, Rebecca. Not just because of the business problems, but because we hurt you so deeply." "That was never our intention." Harold cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss the terms of the proposal? I've drafted several options based on our conversations yesterday." For the next hour, we negotiated. My father initially countered with 20% ownership, which I flatly rejected. Paula surprised everyone by offering to transfer 35% directly to me from her share. "I never wanted to be the majority owner anyway," she said. "I just wanted to be part of the family business without being stuck in the accounting department." "You could have told me that 10 years ago," I said, but there was less bite in my words than there would have been a week earlier. By the time our entrées arrived, we had outlined an agreement. I would receive 35% ownership transferred from Paula, reducing her stake to 40%. My parents would retain their 25%. I would become Chief Operations Officer with equal decision-making authority to Paula, who would focus on creative direction and client relationships, her actual strengths. Board decisions would require majority approval, meaning no major changes could happen without at least 2 of the 3 ownership parties agreeing. Most importantly to me, the agreement included a mandatory 45-hour work week maximum for all executives, with at least 3 weeks of vacation annually. The culture of endless work that had defined Mitchell Construction under my father would end with his generation. As Harold drafted the final points, Paula leaned toward me. "Can we talk? Just the 2 of us." My initial instinct was to refuse, but something in her expression stopped me.
Fine.
5 minutes. We stepped outside onto the restaurant's riverside patio, away from our parents and the lawyer. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said immediately. "When Dad approached me about taking over, he made it sound like you were too valuable in operations to move into ownership, that the company needed you exactly where you were. And you believed that?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "I wanted to," she admitted. "It was flattering to be wanted after years of feeling like the family disappointment. The artsy daughter who couldn't hold a real job while you were the successful one." I stared at her in disbelief. "You thought I was the favorite?" "Dad talked about your fresh perspective constantly." "Only after I came back," she said. "Before that, it was always, why can't you be more like Rebecca? Rebecca knows what she wants. Rebecca is building something." We stood in silence, each recalibrating decades of family dynamics from this new perspective. "We've never really talked, have we?" I finally said. "Not about anything important." "No," Paula agreed. "We were too busy competing for attention in our own ways." She hesitated. "I don't want to be CEO, Rebecca. I'm terrible at it. But I do want to contribute to the company. I have ideas that could really work, especially if I had your operational expertise to implement them properly." For the first time, I could envision a future where Paula and I actually complemented each other's strengths instead of competing. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. When we returned to the table, Harold had the preliminary agreement ready for review. We spent another hour refining details, but the framework remained as we discussed. By mid-afternoon, we had a document that protected my interests while preserving the family business. "We'll need a few days to properly execute everything," Harold explained. "But with signatures on this letter of intent, we can begin the process." One by one, we signed, my father first, then my mother, Paula, and finally me. As I set down the pen, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Not completely gone, but lighter. "Will you come back to the office tomorrow?" my father asked as we prepared to leave. "Anderson is still threatening to pull his contract." I shook my head. "Not tomorrow. I need time to process everything. And to decline another job offer that I've been seriously considering." His eyes widened slightly at the reminder that I had options beyond Mitchell Construction. "Besides," I added, "I'm still officially on vacation for 5 more weeks. I think I'll actually take some of it. I'll be available by phone for emergencies, real ones, starting Monday." As we parted ways outside the restaurant, my mother hugged me briefly. This time, I didn't pull away. "We have a lot to rebuild," she whispered. "Not just business relationships." Yes, I agreed. "We do." I walked to my car feeling strangely lightheaded. The future I'd envisioned for years had been destroyed, but something new and potentially better was taking shape from the rubble. It wasn't perfect, and trust would take time to rebuild, but it was a start. That evening, I called Garrett Westfield to decline his offer, explaining that my family situation had evolved. "I can't say I'm not disappointed," he said, "but I understand the pull of family business. Our offer remains open if things don't work out." "I appreciate that more than you know," I replied sincerely. With that safety net still in place, I opened a bottle of wine and did something I hadn't done in years. Absolutely nothing. No work emails, no project planning, no crisis management. Just sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset, and allowing myself to imagine a future where work was important, but not all-consuming. For the first time in a decade, I felt like I could breathe. 1 month later, I walked into Mitchell Construction as co-owner and chief operations officer. My new office, not my father's corner office as originally offered, but a redesigned space with large windows and room for both a traditional desk and a comfortable meeting area, symbolized the changed dynamics. The intervening weeks had been transformative. I'd taken a real vacation for the first time in a decade, a solo trip to a beach resort where I'd done nothing but read novels, swim, and sleep for 10 glorious days. Upon returning, I'd spent time with a career counselor who helped me establish healthy boundaries between work and personal life. The company had changed too. With Paula's agreement, we'd implemented a new organizational structure that played to everyone's strengths. She took over client acquisition and marketing, areas where her creative background and people skills shone. I managed operations, finances, and project execution, my natural domains. My father reluctantly stepped into an advisory role, focusing on mentoring younger staff while gradually reducing his hours as part of a 3-year retirement plan. The Anderson contract is secure, I told Paula during our morning meeting. I walked Maxwell through the new management structure yesterday, and he's satisfied that his project will receive the attention it needs. That's fantastic, Paula said, genuine relief in her voice. I tried so hard to connect with him, but he just kept asking for you. He's old school construction, values competence over charm. I smiled to soften the words. But the Westridge expansion? That was all you. They're thrilled with the design concepts. We'd fallen into an unexpected rhythm, each acknowledging the other's contributions without the underlying competition that had characterized our relationship for decades. The staff had adjusted surprisingly well to the new leadership dynamic. Many seemed relieved that the tension of the past month had resolved and that the 80-hour workweek expectation had officially ended. We'd implemented new project management systems that improved efficiency without requiring excessive overtime. Eleanor, who had witnessed the entire drama unfold, stopped by my office later that day. The place feels different, she observed. Better. Less frantic. I suggested. More balanced, she corrected. Your father built something impressive, but it was always one-dimensional. With you and Paula working together, there's a completeness that was missing before. Her words stayed with me throughout the day, through meetings and client calls that once would have consumed all my mental energy. Now, I found myself looking forward to the evening, to leaving at a reasonable hour for a change. At 6 p.m., I closed my laptop decisively. I had dinner plans, an actual date with Nathan Rivera, an engineer I'd met through the Anderson project years ago but had always been too busy to get to know. We'd reconnected during the negotiations with Anderson, and his quiet competence and wry humor had been a welcome distraction from family drama. As I gathered my things, Paula appeared in my doorway. Heading out already, she teased. The Rebecca I used to know would be here until midnight. That Rebecca was compensating for something, I replied. This one has an ownership stake and dinner reservations. She laughed. With the mysterious Nathan you won't tell me anything about? Second date. Too early for family interrogations. Fair enough. She hesitated. Before you go, Mom called. She's insisting on reinstating the Sunday family dinners. Says we need healing time or something equally mom-like. The thought of returning to those dinners, with all their complicated history, made me pause. I don't know, Paula. I told her we discuss it. No pressure. She adjusted the colorful scarf around her neck, a remnant of her artistic days that now complemented her more professional attire. For what it's worth, I think we could use the practice at being a normal family, whatever that means. A month ago, I would have rejected the idea outright. Now, I found myself considering it. Maybe. Let me think about it. That's all I ask. She stepped back. Enjoy your date. Don't think about work for at least 12 hours. Doctor's orders? Owner's orders, she corrected with a smile. As I drove to the restaurant, I marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. The business was thriving. Our first quarter projections already showed improvement under the new structure. Paula had found her niche in client relations and marketing, bringing in 3 new accounts with her innovative approaches. I had implemented operational efficiencies that reduced costs without sacrificing quality. Even my father seemed relieved to be stepping back, though he occasionally couldn't resist offering unsolicited advice. Most importantly, I'd reclaimed my life. I went to the gym 3 times a week. I joined a book club. I was considering adopting a dog, something I'd never have contemplated when working 80-hour weeks. The date with Nathan was comfortable and engaging. When he asked about my family, I found myself able to explain the recent drama without the raw pain that had accompanied it just weeks ago. "So you stood your ground and got what you deserved," he summarized. "That's impressive." It wasn't just about winning, I reflected. It was about being valued appropriately. By them and by myself. Well, speaking as someone who's worked with both Mitchell and Westfield, they're lucky to have kept you, he said, raising his glass in a small toast. The following Sunday, after much deliberation, I decided to attend the family dinner. The familiar drive to my parents' house no longer filled me with anxiety. When Paula opened the door instead of my mother, I knew they'd orchestrated this deliberately, easing me back into family dynamics through the relationship that had begun to heal first. Dinner was different from our old gatherings. My father was quieter, less domineering. My mother watched us all with hopeful eyes, jumping in to change the subject whenever business talk threatened to overtake the conversation. Paula and I maintained the new rapport we developed, different from our childhood relationship, but perhaps healthier. As we helped clear the dishes, my father approached me in the kitchen. "I've been meaning to tell you," he said awkwardly. "The board presentation you and Paula gave last week was exceptional. Better than anything I could have done." From him, this was monumental, an admission that the company might actually be better under our leadership than his. "We make a good team," I acknowledged. "Different strengths, different perspectives." "Yes, well." He cleared his throat. I should have seen that sooner. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Thomas Mitchell, it was close. The following week, Paula and I presented our comprehensive 5-year plan to the board, a true collaboration that combined her vision for market expansion with my detailed operational strategy. As we stood side by side, confidently answering questions and building on each other's points, I caught my father watching us with an expression I'd never seen before. Not pride exactly, but a kind of wonder, as if seeing something unexpected and remarkable unfold before him. Later, as we celebrated the board's unanimous approval with champagne in my office, Paula raised her glass. "To losing the business," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "If Dad hadn't made his colossally stupid decision," she explained, "we'd still be stuck in our old patterns. You working yourself to death, me feeling inadequate, him controlling everything. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads to getting what you actually need." I considered this, then clinked my glass against hers. "To finding something better." As we sipped our champagne, I gazed out the window at the city skyline. The journey had been painful, the betrayal deep, but the outcome had exceeded anything I could have imagined. By standing up for my worth, professionally and personally, I hadn't just secured an ownership stake in the family business. I'd reclaimed ownership of my life. And that was worth more than any company ever could be. So, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have walked away completely, or fought for what was rightfully yours? Have you ever had to stand up to family for your own self-worth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Your support means everything to this channel. And don't forget to share with anyone who might be struggling to set boundaries with family or recognize their own value. Sometimes the hardest person to stand up to is the one who raised you, but as I learned, it can lead to the most rewarding outcomes. Thank you for watching, and remember, knowing your worth isn't selfish, it's essential.